this kind of just I didn't look into the research on this to give you any stats. You just kind of like pull this idea out of my head. Have you worked with anybody who like grew up in an environment that had a lot of food insecurity that didn't necessarily have that literally came from a place where like maybe their parents could only feed them twice a day or once a day, or they didn't have food on the weekends? I know, I live in Kansas City, and I kind of grew up and live currently in, very like mixed economic areas. And I was friends with people that kind of in that situation, and it is a reality for some people. Um, some escape it, some don't. Have you worked with people that kind of lived in that environment and gone on, but then still, kind of have that weighing them down?
Yeah, so that's even a harder place to shift from, because that's not necessarily just your belief, like that's your value system, right?
Mm.
Your value system is, I appreciate, like I have to clean the plate because I truly don't believe or feel that I may get enough at that next meal. And
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing how much um, what what we learn, in our environment growing up, what we had, what we didn't have, the way we were talked to about food, um, the way what kind of meals were cooked around us, how much that can influence us as an adult. And so I do have quite a few clients who prescribe to that, clean plate club
Mm-hmm.
mentality of like, I've got to eat it all, and really feel guilty, regardless of the socioeconomic status that they're at now. It's really hard to throw away food, or really
Mm-hmm.
hard to, um, you know, feel safe and secure
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to food. So yeah, that's a tough one for sure.
Yeah, it's just people come from all different backgrounds, so it's just since these are the people you get to talk to, it's like kind of curious, how you deal with these different mentalities. I know um, my grandparents, because my father's older, lived through the Great Depression,
Mhm.
and they were farmers,
Mhm.
so they know all about like food. They knew all. They're no longer with us. They knew all about food and like not having enough. Um, and that's kind of got passed on to my dad a little bit, though he's not he's not too bad. He didn't really pass that on to me, but
Mhm.
I do have a little bit of kind of like first-hand experience with that. Like, eat everything on your plate. Like, don't waste anything kind of mentality, and that plagues a lot of people for various reasons.
Mhm. Yeah, and I always tell people that, well, it's a waste either way, right? It's a
Right.
waste if you're overeating to the point where you're uncomfortable and it's sending you down this, guilty spiral. It's a waste if you throw it away. So that's definitely a process, and like we talked about, takes practice, takes time of
Mm-hmm.
learning to go. I have resources. I am lucky now, or fortunate enough now that I have plenty of access to food, that I don't have to eat it all right now in this moment.
Mm-hmm. Um, so thinking about input, I know I don't know if this was I can't remember if this was a podcast or a blog post you did talking about social media, and I think it was a podcast talking about basically your social media diet and whether the people that you follow and the things that you see, whether that is a positive impact on your mental state.
Hmm.
Um, is that I want to dive into that a little bit more. Like, is that a matter of just thinking about yourself and like, does this person affect me positively, negatively, or is it a matter of the environment as a whole, as in social media as a whole, is relatively unhealthy? I kind of isolate myself. I don't use social media that much, so
Hmm.
I don't have a lot of personal experience as far as like getting on Instagram and following people and do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's just so much in social media now, that can influence us, even on a subconscious level.
Mm-hmm.
So in that podcast particular, asking people, how do you feel when you see this girl in a bikini,
Mm-hmm.
or this Instagram model, or there's a lot of fitness influencers who may not necessarily have the background, but they've got a good body, you know.
Mm-hmm.
How does that make me feel? Is that, I think a lot of times people think, we think, oh, if I look at this certain body type or physique, it's going to be motivating to me. And for some people, maybe, but for a lot of people, they find I actually just feel worse about myself, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that I'll never be that thin, or I'll never have, those types of muscles, things like that. As well as, when it comes to food too, what are you seeing on social media? Does it make you feel bad about yourself? Does it educate you? Does it inspire you? Or is it having a negative effect? So that's kind of a good barometer, I guess you could say, to clean up your feed.
Yeah. So it's really just like your approach is more think about your own kind of personal attitudes towards people, but not necessarily that like, you know, Mark is a really negative person on social media. You got to get rid of him, and so is whoever. It's not necessarily like that person in particular is bad, although I'm sure there are bad actors, but just that maybe like for my like in my case, I've been trying to like work on having a better diet to reduce like my body fat. I've never had a six pack. I've always been a
Hmm.
very competitive athlete, but
Yeah.
my diet's not been, I'll say, optimized so that I can have a six pack. So like, say I'm seeing all these guys with six packs, and then I'm like hating myself, so I need to get rid of them. They're not necessarily bad people. Is that kind of the idea?
Right. It's not a reflection on that person, but what is it that they're putting out there on social media? How is it affecting me? Right?
Mhm.
It's not about them. It's not you, it's me, right?
Right, right. Except that is the reality this time. It's not a cop out.
Yeah.
Um, with the time we have left, I do want to talk a little bit about. So you've kind of addressed fad diets a little bit in some of your posts. I like the term diet cults. Who I don't know if you're familiar with Matt Fitzgerald, but I talked to him a few weeks ago. He's a sports journalist, an author. He predominantly writes books around running and endurance sports.
Hmm.
He wrote a book called Diet Cults. I just like that term because it seems to get to the heart of the mentality of like it's almost like a religion. Like this is the thing that I do, and
Hmm.
everything revolves around this.
Hmm.
Um, I guess I want to use an example. I actually know a lady who is one of the top influencers in the keto space, and
Hmm.
she has like one of the top selling keto recipe books right now. Very nice lady. It's worked very well for her, at least from her kind of anecdotal standpoint.
Hmm.
Um, but and feel free to correct me. It seems like you are not a big prescriber of diets. So how do you deal with that kind of dichotomy between like, say, her who's had seemingly pretty good success. She's lost a lot of weight. She feels a lot
Hmm.
better. All these kind of things on this particular diet, and then also kind of trying to reconcile that with your own philosophy.
Yeah. No, I deal with that challenge, I guess, every day. Uh, do you mean how do I deal with it personally? Like personally from a professional standpoint, or
Yeah, like
how to
so
just in
so
general?
say do you say okay, well if it's working for you, it's okay, or are you like I think
Uh,
you could probably still incorporate some more foods, or like say somebody's just dead set on a particular diet when they come to you. Like, how do you deal with and
yeah.
say they've had success with it? How do you kind of approach that mentality?
Right. No, that's a great question. So yeah, I mean, I have clients who do do keto. It's not that um, I think, understanding that non-diet isn't necessarily anti-diet, if that
Okay,
makes sense,
okay,
right? Like, so part of my role is that, if somebody comes to me really fired up about, let's use keto as an example. They've done the research, they've seen, that it's helped other people, and they want to explore it, they want to try it. With my background in nutrition, I understand. I can help anybody with any type of, disease management, whether it's renal, whether it's, they've got, like you said, they've got different energy requirements, whatever it is. But helping that person become the expert of, okay, what are the pros and cons of eating this type of way?
mm,
What is it that makes you feel good about it? But um, how does, for example, we'll use that example, keto. How is that affecting you when you go out to eat? Do you find that it's a real stress when you go out to eat in a social setting? Do you
Hmm.
find a lot of guilt if you do eat too many carbohydrates or things like that? So for me, it's really getting to the root of how is the way you're eating affecting you, all these other aspects of your life.
Mm.
I don't think there's a right or wrong way. I think to me, the word diet is just the way you eat, right? It's not you're on a diet, it's not you're off a diet. It's
Right.
just that's just a snapshot of the way you eat in this time.
Okay. Okay. As I said, it's just one of those things since like I'll paraphrase Matt. He kind of is he prescribes. Again, he's not a registered dietitian, but his opinion in his book is he prescribes what did he call it? Agnostic healthy eating, where it's like kind of the idea about intuitive eating, like eat things
Mm-hmm.
that make you feel good.
Mm-hmm.
Don't try to prescribe, one this very rigid. You can only have rice on Tuesdays at noon because it's like that kind of mentality. Getting out of that. So
Right.
I always like to ask the professionals, how you deal with that, since I know that as an entrepreneur, you learn about marketing, you learn about the psychology of selling things, and there are times, especially in the food industry, when the kind of dark side of marketing comes out, and foods that aren't necessarily the best for people are pushed, and successfully, because you have
Mm-hmm.
good marketers working behind
Right.
them. So it's like it's almost your job to kind of like try to unravel some of that stuff with all the things that you've learned.
I always say it's job security, So
Yeah.
for me, what I do is, when I find myself like, oh, it's that comparison, my
Mhm.
comparing my success to somebody else. It's for me, I put my blinders on, and as long as I can go to bed and put my head down on the pillow at night, knowing that I've done what feels right to me,
Mhm.
and I've helped my clients in a way that I feel that is going to help serve them best and not cause any more harm, then for me, that helps me sleep at night, and at the same time keeps me motivated and passionate about continuing the work that I do, despite
Mhm.
how challenging it can be. Because when I have somebody who does have that aha moment and goes, "Oh my gosh, I ate this," or I didn't think so much about food today, and I'm at my lowest weight ever, but
Mhm.
I'm not obsessed with food as much anymore. Like for me, that moment of seeing people have kind of that aha moment, like it's the most rewarding work.
That's always great to hear. It's like the subjective approach to your own practice, not just the subjective approach of like, how do I get people to think intuitively and feel intuitively about their own body, but then your own internal system of like, I need to keep my own like moral barometer or moral compass in check.
Right. Yeah.
I'll nerd out a little bit. Have you read any John Stuart Mill,
I
like
have
On
not.
Liberty?
I
Okay.
have not.
So this is required reading for us in college. And it's a very thin book. It's about 100 pages long, but it is
Uh-huh.
very dense in that his sentences are sometimes half a page. Um, but in it he prescribes this kind of utilitarian thought where he talks about the harm principle, which I'm a big fan of, and it's basically like as long as you're not harming anybody else, um, then do whatever you want to do.
Hmm.
And it kind of sounds like you have a similar kind of idea when you said, as long as I feel okay when I go to sleep at night, I can get sleep. I'm not restless, knowing that I didn't do anything harmful to somebody.
Right.
That's okay. So I like that guiding principle. So it's just I'm always curious when it comes up if anybody is like was introduced to it via Mill or whether it kind of came up in life.
It was so good that it's just gotten spread, I guess. I don't know.
So something like that. Um, so here we are at the end. I'm going to ask you. So this season, I'm asking everybody the same question. It's particularly prescient for you and all the dietitians I get to talk to. I ask everybody on the athletic side or exercise side, Post workout, if you can only choose one food for recovery for the rest of your life, what do you choose?
Oh, that's so tough. Um, you always hear that chocolate milk's like the perfect
Mm,
carb to protein ratio.
right.
But oh my gosh, what do I like to eat post workout? For me, it's like a meal. Like I just want a meal, usually a sandwich. Because you get a little bit of carbs, you get your protein from the meat, and then avocado for a little bit of fat.
Okay.
That's tough. I don't know. One meal,
Like,
that's like picking your
like,
favorite
like,
child.
like well, sometimes you can have a favorite child. You're not supposed to, but we know what happens.
So I'll say, yeah, either chocolate milk or like an actual meal, like a good solid plate, balanced meal with a little bit of crunch, a little bit of hot, a little bit of cold, protein,
Okay.
fat, and carb, all of it.
See, it seems like people will answer. The vast majority of people I talk to will answer with like a comfort food,
Uh-huh.
and then like the more professionals, like you, will go with what the extra, the kind of answer we would expect. Although this may make you feel good. Nancy did say chocolate milk, which that episode will come out on Friday, so nobody knows. You'll know right now, but nobody else knows besides me
It's
for
it's
right
much
now.
cheaper
So
too. It's much cheaper than your fancy protein shakes and all that.
it's also delicious,
And
which the
delicious. Yes.
protein isn't, depending on the blend you get, is not always the best taste. Um, Katie, if people want to see you, follow you, get in touch with you, listen to your podcast, where do they go? How do they find you?
Yeah, so the podcast is Fit Friends Happy Hour, but you can find me. I like to hang out on Instagram at KT Hake, or they can just go to my website, www.katiehake.com.
Sounds good. Thanks so much for coming on today. It's really been fun talking to you.
Thanks so much for having me.
Take care.